Another episode of the Growth League podcast. I'm here with my guest, Rene Puerta. He's the Director of Marketing at Gregorys Coffee based in New York City, the Big Apple. Rene, welcome. It's great to have you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to chat with you, Caleb. I know it feels like a continuation of our amazing conversations.
Yeah, it's been really cool for those of you listening. Rene and I got to know each other over a year ago, and I've been fascinated and really encouraged to learn about his origin story into the game of marketing and how he has evolved as not only a marketer but as a leader of a function and a team. So I think a lot of what I've got to know about you is so indicative of what other marketing leaders are going through, right? In certain cases, you feel very comfortable and confident in terms of know exactly what I want to. In others, I don't know what's around the corner, what comes next, and that's just part of playing this game. And so I think getting to know you has been awesome from that standpoint. So give us a bit of an understanding of how it started. Like, what's your career journey look like, and how did you get to the place where you are today, leading the marketing function at Gregorys?
And I remember when you first talked to me about this podcast and you actually used the phrase, like, what called you to your current opportunity? And like, literally since that moment, it's stuck in my head because I think the terminology couldn't be more accurate for this particular opportunity and for where I am today in general. So, yeah, it really is something that calls me being here at Gregorys in New York. But the reason I say that is because I do want to go back to my teenage years where I spent several years working in kitchens, cafes, hotels as an usher, really focused almost entirely working in part-time jobs and service businesses. When I was in high school, even dabbled a bit in my summers in university and during the year in university, and developed an appreciation and passion for just being on the floor, interacting with people in that setting, and for delivering incredible experiences and service for people. So that was something that stayed with me even when I went to university, went to business school, had a more traditional start to my career in CPG at Kraft Heinz, later at Hudson's Bay, rest in peace, and RP. But even as I went through other stages in building my skill set, it was something that always stayed with me. And then I had the opportunity of meeting Greg, who's the founder and CEO of Gregorys Coffee. He's been around for nearly 20 years here, growing this brand. I felt that same passion, and it sort of it sort of brought upon this. It brought upon this feeling that I hadn't felt in a very long time since I've worked in this business in a different capacity, and having the opportunity to come back as a marketing leader has been incredible for me. So that's sort of how I found myself to where I am today.
That's awesome. Throughout that journey, and especially 6 to 12 months after you started at Gregorys and became accountable to the function of marketing, did you learn anything interesting about yourself as a person and as a professional in this new world? Something you were maybe surprised to learn about yourself, or maybe it confirmed certain things about the way you do things. Just tell me about what you learned about yourself throughout that first kind of year stint.
The thing that I probably turn to most often when reflecting in my experience here, particularly is regarding like operating under a different set of resources and in a really small team. Um, Personally, I think I was able to thrive under the structure of a larger company, and obviously, alongside budgets and resources and learnings that came with that. But I found myself enjoying my job more than I ever have in this setting. And I think part of it is being a player who, plays on all four lines, as you would put it, and and just being so close to the ground level, specifically like on the front lines of the business where we are delivering those experiences to our customers. So I think for me, it's never been more fulfilling being that connected to our customers.
What is it about constraint around team or budget that you have since come to appreciate and enjoy playing on all four lines? Like, I would imagine that at some point there was some anxiety around the fact that I'm used to not dealing with these constraints and now I am. But why did that start to become something that was embraced and possibly even enjoyed?
There's a few things that are probably worth mentioning, but one is certainly the speed in which you move and which you learn. Um, Specifically, with the ever changing situations, team structures, budgets, and evolving business, especially a retail business where challenges happen in real time. You sort of learn to adapt, and out of those challenges, comes some pretty incredible outcomes, some new ways of doing things, some new relationships with vendors, or some new learnings with marketing and executing marketing that I think are incredible, and certainly wouldn't happen without being in this situation. So so it almost forces you to act differently, and from that, I think it's for me has been a shift in mindset and how I operate, not just as a marketer, but as somebody who's operating a business. So I think it's an incredible learning.
Yeah, it's that pressure and constraint creates growth, right? And you see it time and time again. We have a tendency to get a little bit complacent, a little bit lazy when there is no such thing as constraint around budget or team resources. So, I think most of the audience understands sort of the classic mandate of a marketing leader. But talk to me a little bit about your day to day at Gregorys. Like, at the end of the day, how do you see your accountability, and what does a day in the life of Rene look like leading this function and this team?
It's really built around what our mission is, I think, which is ultimately it's to bring people in the door and get them to come back, um, to ensure our customers have incredible experiences, a great cup of coffee, um, no matter where their touch point is, or where they're purchasing their Gregorys from, whether it's from ordering delivery, ordering ahead, going to one of our shops in the suburbs where they might sit down for 2 hours. There's just so many different ways in which a customer can interact with our brand, and our role is to make sure that that's an incredible touch point, and that we can attain them. Um, I also see marketing, and specifically my role, especially as a leader in marketing, as a very critical function to building and driving this culture of hospitality within our walls, which, as many will say, is probably the most essential piece of DNA that you can build um, in an operation such as this, especially coffee, where there's this daily ritual, this a deep emotional connection to the experience, to the barista, that you have every day. And we find that to be such a critical part that marketing needs to influence, even though that's technically an operational responsibility. Um, so uh, that to me is sort of the high level. At a more granular level, we have a very busy, sort of go-to-market flow, as you would be familiar with, and essentially operating all of our channels, so managing our teams, getting in and writing copy myself, helping with photo shoots and planning. There's really kind of a lot. At Gregorys, we have a super lean team, so I'm quite involved with a lot of what happens.
Yeah. You talked about hospitality and seeing a big part of your focus or impact needing to be served in that area, not only because of the ritual and the experience with the barista, but also considering the fact that there's a lot of different options to get a cup of coffee, especially in New York City, right? So it's like you can compete on beans to a certain level. You can compete on, price point to a certain level, but the tipping point is a bit more felt, right?
Yeah, it's funny because when you look at like what are biggest drivers of purchase in the category. It's almost deceiving in a way because um, customers don't say that explicitly, but I think we see it more implicitly. Um, it's a table stakes. I mean, usually all it takes is one bad experience for somebody to be turned off. So it's a combination of, how do you at a baseline operate extremely consistently, um, and then how do you take it a step further as much as possible, as often as possible, and then how do we do that on the brand side as well? But the experience is so critical, and unlike other businesses where you might see this customer once a week or once a month in the case of a full service restaurant maybe. For us, it's often several times a week and not daily. So you have a lot of chances to F it up, and that's where it becomes a bit of a challenge. And so much of our marketing effort is focused on winning back these bad experiences because they do inevitably happen no matter how good your business is.
Right. Have you noticed in your space, and perhaps it's different within your geographic market, but for Gregory specifically, have you become aware of like a certain number of times that somebody needs to buy from Gregory's to the point where you would kind of consider them loyal? Like, is it 15 times? Is it two? Is it three? Give me an understanding of that from your perspective.
It's a good question. I think others might measure it differently, but the way we look at it from at least a loyalty perspective is knowing that once a customer gets to, usually the sweet spot is around 3 transactions or 3 to 5 transactions on the app, their lifetime value will shoot up between 5 and 10%, 5 and 10 compared to somebody who just makes that first transaction. Um, so as somebody who's really focused on building that loyalty, we find critical to get them to that point. But it is incredible. When you see the numbers of how much people spend on coffee, you're amazed. How is this possible?
Yeah,
But
that's how you
we have,
know.
yeah,
That's how you know it's an emotional engagement, right? Like logic, there is no room for logic in the economics of that. Like Starbucks
no.
for me, you know. So from a lifetime value standpoint, is what's the biggest variable? Like, what's the more important variable? Number of times coming back, or number of things in addition to the coffee that they're buying, like check size versus repeat business, or is it just a healthy balance of the two for you guys?
I would say so. Generally, it's a healthy balance. Though we tend to not see like a pretty, we tend to not see a huge deviation from customer behavior with purchases.
Right.
We tend to see it more based on the occasion, what time of day it is, where the customer is located. That is like, are they in the suburbs and coming on a Saturday afternoon? They're going to spend a lot more money than somebody coming in the city at 7 a.m. Just by nature of the occasion. So we tend to see more correlation based on that rather than just behavior that we can necessarily control.
Right.
The biggest thing for us is certainly driving that traffic and making sure that we get those customers to have a great experience, come back and give them a reason and give them excitement, through various marketing strategies, through our LTOs, our seasonal menus, and sort of the other elements which are core to the Gregorys experience.
Right. Got it. One of the things I've always been impressed by you on is, and I think it's probably tied to your experience when you were younger, right? Being on the floor, being in these environments, and you maybe are aware of it or maybe not, but a lot of times you talk about crossing the border between marketing and operations, and you're looking at your marketing strategy through the lens of an operator or through the lens of the economics associated to it. And that's a rare thing, at least based on what I've seen. Like there's a lot of marketers that are marketing silo focused, but it seems, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like a lot of your decision making is coming from the lens of an operator, right? And why is that
Maybe
important?
that's what it might be what a year and a half of reporting into a CEO
Right.
or like an owner operator does to you, but it's certainly just something that's like been sort of ingrained in my mantra as a marketer. I think since I started working at Craft even 8 years ago. I think it's I consider it to be like a superpower maybe. Definitely like just something I find is critical to growing an organization, to being a leader is developing those cross-functional relationships, understanding what's important to your team, and finding ways to support them in everything they do. So I think maybe it's more of a natural thing for me, but it's funny, and I appreciate you mentioning that.
No, no. Well, I'll bring you down now. What's your Achilles heel as a marketing leader? self
um,
self admitted. There's no.
yeah, yeah, for sure. It's definitely like, oh, you should ask my team. I think I'm probably like more than I should be, like too much of a realist or a pessimist with things. Like I'm definitely, um, to your point about kind of putting on my operating goggles a lot. I do often find myself putting on my finance glasses more often than I should, and I think um, what that leads to is not pushing hard enough as a marketer. Some I catch myself thinking why we shouldn't do something or why something might work, um, rather than thinking how big or how amazing could this idea be, and forcing somebody else on the team to try to reel me in. Luckily, we have a CEO who's extraordinarily visionary and is often pushing us in pretty crazy directions. But I think that's something that I need to embrace a bit more myself as a marketer.
Well, awareness is the first step, don't they say? And then that's and I've loved our conversations over the years about that because it's a very real thing. We all at least you're not just throwing stuff against the wall to see what sticks. At least there's some fundamental business parameters that you put up to protect the brand and protect the money invested into the brand. And so, there could be worse problems.
I'd like to think so. I definitely know that. Yeah, I'd like to challenge my team a little bit more to think outside the box. And I think that starts with me. But I'm sure that that's something that just takes time to foster and develop. And we want to be pushing boundaries of the brand, and really that is a leadership driven thing.
Yeah. There's a few things that we've kind of touched on before in previous conversations, and had some email exchange around a few topics I think are interesting for us to go back and forth on. One of them that you brought up was interesting. You were curious about from the agency perspective, from an agency partner perspective, what are some of the things that I think more clients should know about or be thinking about when approaching these partnerships? I'll give you my 2 cents, but why does this come up for you?
I'm always thinking about how I can be a better partner to my agencies and to my vendors. At the end of the day, I think if the objective is to create value, to have the sum be larger than the two individual parts, then it starts with understanding and building that relationship. So I'm always curious if there's things that see or you or any agency partner. But I think you have a great perspective being in the industry.
I think I reflect a lot on the best partnerships we've ever had, and they've always had a certain element of like very not blunt, but very direct and open conversations at the beginning about a few things. And so, one that I learned from a client a number of years ago was he asked a great question, and I encourage all companies to ask this question to their potential partner as they're kind of in the onboarding stages, or maybe even the proposal consideration phases, which is he asked me, "Hey Caleb, what would need to happen for us to fire you, or why should I fire you? What would have happened such that my next step was to end the partnership?" And I thought that was obviously you ask it with care and consideration and mutual respect, But the conversation that comes out of that, first of all, the reflection from the agency partner, because you need to reflect a little bit on that question. But then there's a sense of shared ownership around, I'm going to put some skin in the game in terms of defining what would happen such that we would fully expect you to fire us, right? And then through that conversation, there comes a moment of shared clarity and understanding and almost handshake agreement, right? I think that's one question that can help a lot of brands right away. The second question that I was asked by a different client, which I have referred to a lot, is tell me or recite to me or describe to me your understanding about how we make money and how we retain profit. Teach me about the economics and the business infrastructure of our business. No, instead of teach me how to grow my social media following, or tell me what you're going to tell me about, because I want to understand that you have a sufficient lens of business understanding through which you will apply all marketing decision making, right? So I thought that was a great question. And in a lot of ways, how we operate now as a company at Hook and Ladder, it's, before we do X, do we understand why from a foundational economic business infrastructure standpoint? Do we understand how what we do influences the main business objectives and KPIs, which are not follower growth or engagement? You know what I mean? So I thought those were two pretty interesting ones. But then once you're in a partnership, I think the best experiences I've ever had is, where the agency representative is not always a yes man or girl. It's with respect, trying to probe for the why. And from the client perspective, it's understanding that, the structure of your partnership may not be a employee employer, but that doesn't mean that the structure can't replicate what true team looks like, right? Because at the end of the day, we're all just people that have decided to get on a boat and go in pursuit of a North Star together. So we shouldn't treat that different than how we would nurture the fibers of a team internally. You know what I mean? So that's my
Those
perspective.
are
What do you think?
fantastic answers. No, those are really fantastic answers. I mean, I could uh, wholeheartedly agree with everything you said. There's a couple of things that stood out, but definitely your second piece, I think, is just such a critical part of any partnership or relationship in business in general, and that's one where too often I feel like it hasn't been there, and that's what's led to just like
Yeah.
brutal discussions or suggestions or ideas that don't make any sense.
Yeah.
Not to like point fingers or call anyone out, but I think it's a reflection of just the work that needs to be put in to foster that long-term relationship. So
I
it
think
was
so.
fantastic.
And having those types of conversations later, they're just expensive. They're more expensive if those conversations are happening later, right? Um, you were talking to me about what makes a great, or asking me about what makes a great marketing hire or team member in kind of today's age, 2025, and then also exploring the context of like balance between the work that they're doing and the fact that they have lives, right? And I would imagine that comes up because it's got to be difficult, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's got to be hard to nail the resourcing part of this puzzle, right? Like there's great talent out there, but they have to be treated differently, and they're looking for different things, and they have lots of different options available to them, just like people have lots of options for a cup of coffee. Tell me what's on your mind about that topic.
I think you hit the nail on the head. Really, it's a culture question. It's a um, just something I'm thinking about because I have all of these, objective and subjective standards for what I think I want from my team, um, and what I think is right. But I'm constantly trying to challenge myself on what it is to be a good boss and what I should be setting in terms of expectations. So I'm curious what your perspective is, especially given how diverse your team is and your partners are.
Yeah, I think the interviewee switched. I like it. It's more Uh, I guess in reflection, you know, we have a special member of our team here named Eliana, and so much of she leads our people and culture function, and she's introduced a lot of ideas like first who, then what. So a lot of times we come up with these job descriptions that are either arbitrary or
Yeah.
they just come based on our prior understanding of that role, and so we try to take people who are so colorful and they have so many different shapes and sizes and unique components of them and we try to plug them in to something that is predefined as compared to take the person and build the role around their zone of genius, around the things that make them special, right? And obviously, if you're hiring someone for social media, they have to have functional expertise in that discipline. But there's a lot of different ways that you can deliver social media such that it adds business value. What if we were to build half of the job description at the beginning and build the other half once we understand their top five strengths or their zone of genius? So I think that's interesting. The second thing that she helped usher in at Hook and Ladder is this idea of stake in the outcome, right? Like people support what they help create. And at the end of the day, a paycheck is only going to get us so far in terms of our like utility in life and our enjoyment in life. But at some point, as humans, we want to know that what we're doing on a day-to-day basis, how does that translate into the outcome and the role, and how could I put my thumbprint on what the public sees? So it's like a sense of creating a sense of ownership, however that looks, right? And all of our employees, I mean, not all of them, but a good chunk of our team are whatever gen we're in now, like Gen Z, Gen whatever, and it's worked because they feel like there's something that's sticky about it. Their thumbprint is on what they're doing, and they're seeing that in real time. So those are two things I think about.
And is that because you get to produce so many amazing campaigns and assets and things that they physically get to see?
I think that's part of it, and it also applies to internal documents and projects that nobody will ever see the light of day, or it comes to preparing for a meeting with a partner and building the architecture of what that meeting is going to look like, right? So it's not always about seeing it in the market, but it's about it can be internal as well. I didn't even bring water. You probably have a water bottle there. Because
Oh, I've been I've been chugging.
what about you? I mean, you've obviously had to hire folks and work to retain folks. What are you seeing? I'm curious because you know I'm always trying to figure it out.
It's very interesting, especially as somebody who um, comes from a more traditional marketing background where I lived in spreadsheets and PowerPoint decks to um, now being uh, in Canva and social media and all kinds of other more channel focused um, channel facing in general. It's been interesting because for me a lot of it was learning myself and understanding um, the hard skills that go behind some of what we do every day. Um, but in terms of like building a team, it was definitely focusing on people first and trying to um, find and grow people that are willing to learn um,
Yeah,
just about anything. And I think, I can attest for the fact that many of our jobs have shifted in so many ways over the past year and a half that I've been here. Um, Certainly still fits within a job description, but doing, the day in the life has changed dramatically and changes in cyclical ways. And I think that just requires
yeah,
um, the right attitude and the right willingness to show up and do what's required every day.
yeah. Well, you kind of triggered another idea based on that, which is, um, you know, today the modern employee, the modern marketer, they're going to thrive if they're held accountable to an outcome as compared to being held accountable to coming at 9 and staying until 5, right? Like treating people like adults, which they are, and understanding that they will find their unique path to, as long as the objective is clearly defined and by when and what does definition of done look like, people love that, right? Because you get to, so I think that's another thing. And uh, oh, I was going to say, well, I'll remember it later.
You're
um,
100% spot on. That was another thing I was like wanting to ask you about as well, but I think you kind of hit on that well. And that, to me, that's the most important thing is defining, what success looks like. In the case that you mentioned earlier, defining what failure looks like as well.
yeah.
Be
Well, the other
clear.
thing I was going to say was, and I think a lot of people disagree with me on this, but whatever. I'm old enough to be comfortable in my opinion, but we're in an age of specialists now, not generalists. And we talk. I think there's a lot of brands that look to hire someone who's eager and young and full of energy, and they're kind of broad in their marketing understanding, and then teach them the specifics of the discipline. But that's going away because, you know, SEO. Take SEO for example. To even have a chance at winning today, especially with AI, integrated search and all this kind of stuff, it's like you have to live, breathe, and sleep SEO. You can't do SEO at 3 o'clock off the side of your desk, right? But that becomes hard when you have resourcing constraint. It's like if I agree with the fact that we're in a specialist culture now from a marketing standpoint, well, that's great, but I can't afford them all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's another thing. And people want to, like, the SEO people I know on our team, the email people I know on our team, they're obsessed with email and SEO. They're not obsessed with the other things, and they're practitioners of that craft. So I think that's another thing that modern day marketers want in their job is the ability to go for depth instead of breadth. So I don't know if you're seeing
It's
that
probably,
in New York.
oh, sure, certainly. I mean, I think more and more, like we've seen that shift of roles that are most in demand are certainly these specialist roles of all of these channels or trades. Um, and there's always going to be, I think, demand for somebody who speaks the language and can understand the bigger picture as well. Um, and it's always going to be a matter of like finding the right balance for your
Yeah.
team. And I guess that's kind of what we're here for as leaders, trying to figure out that what the jigsaw puzzle is, what the right balance is.
I was curious to ask you about, because culture is so important to your team, and I know you are someone who really appreciates the face to face and getting to be with people. But you have a lot of different locations. Like, how do you create culture in a scenario where it's like basically remote work, right? You got to go to all these locations. How do you achieve that?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. We try to strike the balance of, I mean, as a smaller team, um, being in person as much as possible. We also need to be in stores, and then we have stores that are not accessible by, subway or by car.
Yeah.
Um, I think for me, the part of the, I guess, the saving grace of my role is having been to so many of our openings. I've actually got to meet so much of our field team and establish that relationship up front. Um, so that's really helped with that. But I think on just a regular basis, we have weekly calls. We work with our brewer operations team a lot of the time to connect with our people on the ground across the board. Um, but truly, I don't think it's something that we do a good enough job of just knowing that we have customers in over a dozen states across the country who we don't get these face to face interactions with, and the extent of their interaction with the brand is our digital presence, our emails, and who they see in store. But it's not really the same. We can't do as many events. We can't do um, as many of these deep, meaningful conversations with them as we'd like to. So certainly, I think there's just a natural gap being a company at this size, as spread out as we are.
Yeah, and I guess those few times where you do get the opportunity, it's about making them meaningful meetings, right? And meaningful engagements, not just like, nice to see you. It's quality over quantity. you talked about all those locations. I'm curious, like, what's on the horizon for Gregorys? Like, is there big growth goals? Is there? Tell me a little bit about what's next. Do you think for Gregorys?
Yeah, we have a lot of exciting things. A few that I definitely don't want to go into too much detail on, but we have had tremendous success expanding in the suburbs in a the tri-state New Jersey area, and that's been a kind of our main focus for growth from a sort of an expansion perspective. We've continued to explore opportunities with occasion as a whole. So, just knowing most of our business is really concentrated in the morning. Are there ways we can get customers in, for lunch or for more frequent purchases, kind of in that midday or later in the day segments? And then I think there's been a pretty substantial emphasis on building out a loyalty program. We transitioned to a new program just about a year and a half ago, and we've really been trying to figure out ways that we can grow that and use that as a massive lever for us as a company. So that's kind of been one of the biggest projects that we've been working on is a lot of data analysis, testing, and really just trying to plug into our customer behavior in order to optimize and grow that program.
I mean, loyalty is coming up like at every single food restaurant related. I'm curious, in a summarized way, how did sort of the analysis of the different options and the ultimate decision making process go in terms of picking the platform and getting it implemented? Tell me a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, I actually wasn't with Gregorys during the exact time where we decided. I was here for the implementation, but they did do an RFP. There's a lot of competitors in this space actually, specifically for restaurants and food and beverage businesses, as there are with all of our different tech solutions and partners. But they did sort of an RFP, analyze the various costs and functionality, and then currently we're with Tibio today, which is our solution for loyalty, our app. So we chose them based on a variety of factors, but really they have a strong integration with Toast, who is our POS provider. So that was, I think, one of the deciding factors in working with them.
So when you have a platform like this that you're comfortable with and it's been implemented well, for you as a marketer and your team, you probably get pretty excited about trying different things to see if it impacts loyalty. So like exploring different day parts, different occasions, as you talked about. Whereas in the past, it might be like the impact might be hidden or invisible. Now you're almost getting like real time gratification or validation rather of, is that true?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, certain data points are not always available right away, but a lot of data points are, and we certainly do our best to try to move as quickly as possible. But the power of like having a program as customized as it is for a company this size is pretty incredible, and I think that's something that hasn't been around for a long time. I mean, even coming from Toronto a couple of years ago, moving here and just seeing how literally every single F&B business has an app was a big change. I think New York's definitely leading the way in this business, as it always does or tends to in many ways. But it is pretty incredible being able to do so much, being able to communicate with our customers on a daily basis the way we do, and see those results.
That's cool. I just got a notification. Those that are listening on audio won't appreciate this, but back to your topic about how do you create culture with such a remote team. I'll show you. Let's see how this works. I'll show you what we do.
Did your Stampede photos come in?
Yes. No, not those. Let's see. Can you see? You probably see like a million of you. Can you see this little like Sims looking thing right now?
Yeah. Is this your
This is our office.
AR office?
So
Nice.
like I can walk. Well, I can come over here and call someone over, or I can just go into this meeting. I won't, but I could just go into this meeting here, and if I did,
This is
the
incredible.
the screens would pop up right away. So it's like it's the best we can do, but I could
That's
go
so
talk about
cool.
Tony.
And do
Tony,
people interact like on a daily basis on this platform?
oh, like it's always open. It's basically the equivalent of being at work, right? So Tony, my partner, I can't go to him because he's
Yeah.
in a meeting. Or you can like this is my office over here, the football thing. But if I don't want any interruptions, I can lock my door or I can keep my door open. So, anyways, that's
That's
one.
unbelievable.
It's called Gather. It's pretty sweet. Well, this has been awesome. Let me leave us with this. Renee, what's next for you personally in terms of areas that you want to continue to evolve and grow and sharpen as a leader of a marketing function and as a leader of a team? Like, what are you excited about improving and evolve? Maybe not improving, but evolving for yourself.
It's a great question. I think the thing that's most important for me, and maybe I haven't been able to invest as much lately, but is being somebody who is extremely active in culture building within the organization. One of the things I love to do is like literally plan parties, events, find ways to bring people together and create just opportunities for inclusion within organizations. And it's something that I think hasn't been enough of a focus, at least for me. I've been super busy, really, really dialed in with the team. But it's one of my favorite ways to kind of give in an organization. I just love the idea of having something that you can focus on that's not your day job, that keeps you engaged with people that you wouldn't necessarily talk to on a daily basis. So I know maybe not as much of a career thing, but it's something that I just have a huge passion for and think I could do more of. And maybe that's something that extends or goes beyond my organization.
Yeah. Well, if you have a passion for it, you have a responsibility to pursue it, I think, in some regard. And
Yes, sir.
if you ever have a Gregorys party where external people are allowed, make sure don't get lost in the mail. I want
Well,
to
I'll
be.
have to invite your whole office.
That's right. That's right. Well, thank you so much for giving us a peek behind, the brand and yourself as a marketer and a leader and someone who's continually trying to find what that performance edge is and pushing the boundaries and um, including taking your finance classes off or your operations classes off. And no, I think it's great. And I really appreciate the way you look at it holistically. It's operation. It's not marketing over here. Marketing is a fabric of the operation. It needs to be considered as such. It's a great reminder. And for all those reasons and more, I really appreciate you being on the show.
It was a pleasure chatting with you as always, and best of luck with this amazing podcast.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Everyone, Rene Puerta, Marketing Director at Gregorys Coffee.